They say memories make us who we are. What if you could relive every memory you ever lost? Would you risk everything to get them back? This is the story of a woman who did, and discovered that some memories are better left forgotten. This is the story of the memory exchange. In the summer of an unremarkable year, a woman was found wandering the streets. She appeared to be dazed, disoriented, and disheveled. Her shirt was ripped and dirty, but she didn't appear malnourished. When her passerby stopped to help, the woman froze at a simple question. "What's your name?" After a long pause, she realized she had no answer. She didn't know who she was, where she had come from, or even how she ended up there. Doctors at a nearby hospital diagnosed her with trauma-induced retrograde amnesia. And with no family stepping forward, she was transferred to a mental ward where she was labeled simply Jane Doe. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. And after 3 years, Jane was no closer to unlocking the truth about her identity. But one gray morning, inside the ward's common room, everything changed. An advertisement flashed across an old television screen. A company called the Memory Exchange promised something extraordinary, the ability to relive and restore lost memories. For Jane, it wasn't just an ad, it was a lifeline. Encouraged by the medical staff, Jane scheduled her first appointment. Inside the sleek, sterile walls of the Memory Exchange, Jane was greeted by Dr. Ellis, who was a calm and reassuring woman. Electrodes were placed on Jane's temples and a screen flickered to life. And in seconds, she was transported not into the clinic, but into her own past. Her first memory was fragmented. A warm summer day, a man's hand in hers, his face blurry but familiar. Then, distortions, voices, flashes of strangers, broken fragments that slipped further away the harder she tried to focus. Dr. Ellis ended the session. "It's normal for the first time to be confusing," she explained. But Jane left unsettled. The more sessions she attended, the stranger things became. Dreams turned to nightmares, visions of a faceless man committing unspeakable acts against women and children. The images were so vivid. Jane pressed Dr. Ellis for deeper dives, and one night the truth began to emerge. Under sedation, electrodes on her temples once again, Jane entered a memory that changed everything. The man's face came into focus. His name was David. He wasn't a stranger at all. He was her husband, and she wasn't Jane Doe. Her real name was Natalie. But the joy of remembering quickly turned to horror. Natalie's mind played back scene after scene: cash on a table, business deals with dangerous men, a truck full of terrified women and children. She remembered not only David's role in the crimes, but her own. Together they had trafficked human lives for profit. And then the betrayal happened. A stormy night, a syringe in her neck, David pushing her toward death as casually as he had embraced her hours earlier. She remembered him jumping from the car as it plunged into a ditch, leaving her for dead. Somehow, Natalie had survived. When the session ended, she sat frozen, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. For 3 years, she had lived as Jane Doe, a blank slate. But now, she remembered everything: her identity, her crimes, and the man who had destroyed her life. Natalie returned to the ward broken, but not defeated. She curled into bed, overwhelmed with shame, grief, and rage. By morning, her sorrow had hardened into something else: resolve. Staring into a cracked bathroom mirror, she whispered to herself, "He drugged me and left me to die, but I'm still here, and now I know everything." The woman once known as Jane Doe was gone. Natalie had emerged, and she had nothing left to lose. Somewhere out there, David was living his life. He believed she was dead. He believed his secret was safe. He was wrong. And Natalie was going to make him pay. After recovering fragments of her past, Natalie was no longer Jane Doe. She was no longer lost. She was a woman betrayed by the man she loved, and by her own role in crime she could no longer deny. And now she was determined to find David Miller. Her nights were haunted. In her sleep, Natalie found herself in endless warehouses filled with shadows and faceless figures. Women and children screamed, their cries swallowed by the dark. Each nightmare ended the same way, Natalie being pulled under by the very evil she once helped to perpetuate. But every morning, she woke with a sharper resolve. From the dingy confines of a motel room, Natalie began her hunt. A library computer became her weapon, a list of possible addresses, her first lead. Each name on the page, a possible life David might have stolen for himself. Natalie carried more than memories. She carried preparation. Hidden years earlier in a locker at the train station, a duffel bag waited, passports, disguises, and stacks of cash. Against all odds, the bag was still there, untouched, and it gave her the resources to disappear or to strike. For weeks she scoured the city. Each address was another dead end. But then, one ordinary afternoon, she saw him. David. Older, heavier, but unmistakably him. The man who had once whispered love to her before shoving a syringe into her neck. She followed him home. David's new life stood in stark contrast to Natalie's crumbling existence. A grand Victorian home, a blonde woman, a newborn baby. From the shadows, Natalie watched as he kissed his partner tenderly, holding the child like he had never known darkness. But Natalie knew the truth. She had lived it, and she wasn't about to let him bury it under white paint and suburban smiles. She began to stalk the neighborhood, under the name Sarah, a harmless face in glasses and a hoodie. To the neighbors, she was invisible. To David, she was a ghost waiting for the perfect moment to strike. For days, she documented their every move. When the car left, when the curtains opened, when the baby went for walks. Each detail became part of her plan. And then, an opening. The blonde woman introduced herself as Lisa. Pushing her stroller through the park, Natalie smiled softly, handing over a phone number written in bubbly handwriting. To Lisa, she was a sweet young woman looking for part-time work. To Natalie, it was the final piece of bait. When the call came, it was everything Natalie had hoped for. Lisa needed a babysitter Friday night. Natalie spent the days leading up to it preparing disguises, weapons, and her cover identity. But with every step closer, the nightmares worsened. She saw the faces of victims, heard their screams, and in the shadows, she feared she was becoming the very thing she was hunting. Then, the night before, reality struck back. A motel clerk forced his way into her room. Natalie fought back with ferocity, her knife at his throat, her rage consuming her. He fled, but she was left trembling, unsure if the darkness inside her was something she could still control. Now, Friday had arrived. Dressed as Sarah, pink hoodie, jeans, wire glasses, Natalie approached the Victorian mansion. Her pulse pounded as she climbed the steps, tote bag slung over her shoulder. She raised her hand and knocked. The door creaked open, and the shadow of her past stood just on the other side. Friday night. After weeks of planning, disguises, and paranoia, Natalie, now Sarah, stood at the door of the Victorian mansion. Every step had led to this moment. She raised her hand and knocked. 3 soft taps. Inside, footsteps approached. The door creaked open, and there he was, David. The man who haunted her memories, the man who betrayed her, the man who she came here to destroy. But something felt wrong. Behind David, Lisa appeared. She wasn't holding the baby this time. She was holding a clipboard. Natalie froze. Lisa's friendly smile from the park was gone, replaced with something cold, clinical. David's expression mirrored hers, detached, observant. Natalie's pulse hammered in her ears. She stumbled back a step. What? What is this? David tilted his head, studying her. It worked, he said simply. Before Natalie could move, figures emerged from the shadows of the living room. Men in black suits, earpieces in place, their eyes trained on her like predators closing in. Natalie's chest constricted. Panic clawed at her throat. No, this isn't real. I remember, she screamed, her voice cracking. Lisa stepped forward, her tone calm, almost kind. What you remember isn't yours. None of it ever was. The words hit Natalie like a blade. The truck of screaming women, the betrayal in the rain, the syringe, the car plunging into the ditch, all of it implanted, designed, controlled. Subject 37, Lisa continued, writing something on her clipboard. Fully merged and achieved. Memory implantation successful. Emotional instability escalating on schedule. Natalie shook her head violently, clutching her temples. No, I lived it. I felt it. But as her screams echoed, the truth unraveled. The mental ward, the duffel bag, even the motel clerk, every moment had been orchestrated, recorded, observed. Not to restore her memories, but to test if false ones could guide her actions in the real world. The project had a name, Neural Conditioning Initiative, a covert operation buried deep within the memory exchange's glossy facade. Its purpose was chillingly simple: create soldiers, spies, and operatives who believed whatever story they were given. And Natalie, she was just another test subject. 2 agents closed in. Her knees buckled. She fought, thrashing, screaming, but their grip was iron. They dragged her past David, who never once broke his cold, clinical gaze, and into the waiting van outside. Hours later, Natalie awoke in a white room. The padded walls pressed in on her. Leather straps bit into her wrist. A 2-way mirror reflected her wild, tear-streaked face back at her. On the other side of the glass, Dr. Ellis watched. Her expression was calm, detached. She spoke quietly into a recorder. Subject 37 displays complete psychological collapse. Identity confusion irreversible. Recommended transfer to a long-term observation. Natalie screamed until her voice cracked. She begged anyone, everyone, to believe her, but the walls swallowed her words. She wasn't Jane Doe. She wasn't Natalie. She wasn't Sarah. She was no one. And in the cold silence of the ward, she finally understood. She had never been hunting David. She had been hunted all along.